studies that show we had similar hypertrophy. The studies in this section suggest that hypertrophy is similar when comparing programs with and without reps to failure per set, but these studies included variables that may have affected outcomes. One thing that really sucks about the reps to failure versus reps not to failure research is it's plagued by two methodological problems. The first problem is many of the studies compared groups with more than one altered variable, right? And that makes it really hard to determine which variable is the one that caused the difference in outcomes, right? And that unfortunately is rampant through this research. You know, even to the point of like, you know, some of it is not intentional, right? Like some of it is like, well, they didn't equate volume, despite the fact that reps to failure percent resulted in a few more reps per workout, right? But they didn't equate volume, so now you have to think of volume as a potential confounding variable. The other thing that this research is plagued by are these studies that compare legs. So they did reps to failure on one leg and reps not to failure on the other leg. That is a horrible methodological way to do research because there's crossover effects. There's studies that show, like, if you just do strength training on your right leg, your left leg will get stronger. Well, what is that going to do to research findings? That means that it's going to be harder to show a difference between the two because the two protocols are giving crossover effects to the other leg, right? Which means we have a higher probability of a research study showing no statistical difference between the two protocols, right? Although there might be, and the crossover effects happen. You guys get what I'm saying? Anyway, this is what we have to do when we're doing these systematic reviews for you guys, is pare through all this stuff. So the studies in this particular section showed that the reps to failure and reps not to failure resulted in similar hypertrophy, but there was some confounding variables, right? The Sampson et al. Study, the reps not to failure group ended up having faster tempos, right? And then the Bergamasco 2022 study included older participants who were doing 40% of 1 rep max loads. We know that as we get into like our 6th decade, hypertrophy and strength is a little harder to come by. And 40% of 1 rep max loads is really lightweight, right? So it's going to be hard to show a difference there. And then of course, if we're doing faster tempos, for those of you guys who've read the repetition tempo acute variable course, force output during the concentric contraction does have a positive influence on hypertrophy. That's why we recommended those max V tempos, right? Which was a maximum velocity concentric contraction.